Hosting for the Dice Tower is generously provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com. Thanks for your support. The Dice Tower, episode 456.
Hey, look at my game! Look at my game!
Please. Welcome to the Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them. On today's show, Brian visits St. Petersburg, Luke looks at city-building games, and Derek plays Pathfinder solo. Plus, a trio of tales. Tom recaps The Gathering of Friends, and we explore ideas about how to get a publisher to look at your game. I'm Eric Summerer, and here's your host, the Richard Simmons of board gaming, Tom Vassell.
All right. Couldn't you have said, Billy Mays?
No.
You've already used Billy Mays, actually.
I think I have. No, so here it is. You're trying to get attention for someone to look at your game, and no one grabs attention more efficiently than Richard Simmons.
Possibly. All right. Well, hey, this is like a numerically pleasing number of an episode.
Yeah, I know you enjoy these.
4, 5, 6. Pick up sticks. Yeah, I don't know
We're
what
not going to get another one of these until episode 567.
Yeah, I don't think so. We've already done 411, 444, maybe 484 means something. I'll find something.
Yeah, maybe.
492, I'll be like, this is the year Columbus. Well, 1,000 years earlier, but still.
That's a little bit of a stretch.
That's how I remember stuff, though. When I was staying at the hotel the other week, I was in room 470, and I was like, 12 years before Columbus. Also 1,000.
Sure, whatever works.
It worked. I remember.
I don't want you to get lost.
Yeah, well, these hotels are creepy. Have you been in them?
Some hotels, yes.
Folks, my name is not Richard Simmons. It is actually Tom Vassell.
Hi there. I'm Eric Summerer.
And we're here to talk about board games. However, before we jump into this...
Oh.
I can say occasionally when I'm slightly wrong.
Oh?
Well, I got many emails from doctors in regards to our hand-washing comments.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like, at least 5 MDs have assured me that I was incorrect. That fist bumping
that fist bumping does it's clinically proven to spread fewer germs than handshakes.
Yes. So, I was wrong. However, they also said, most of them, that it really doesn't matter. You simply need to wash your hands, keep them clean, don't touch your mouth.
Yes, and that's the hardest thing. That's almost like a unconscious thing, especially when you're sitting there playing a game and thinking, you're sort of rubbing your face, man, how do I do this? And you're not thinking about, getting your hands close to your mouth.
So even though fist bumping is a way to spread less germs than hand washing, I've decided that I will just make a better effort at washing my own hands and not touching my mouth and keeping myself clean as possible and still shake hands, because I just think that the awkwardness of not shaking hands is not worth the price of possibly getting sick.
Yeah.
And also, I still insist that going to bed on time at conventions and eating healthily and staying hydrated, things like that, also matter.
Yes. Oh, hydration is certainly an important part at these cons.
Well, we actually drank a whole gallon of water at Gamma, I think. Not gallon, I mean like a 5-gallon bucket.
They refilled that darn thing every day, and we drained it.
We did. Well, when I say we, you guys who were talking did most of it.
Yeah, it didn't help that, Gamma's held in a desert.
So, we're going to get into some games here. And I think it's interesting because I think in this episode, we have one of the darkest tales of horror.
Oh, boy.
But one of the most uplifting tales of amazement.
Okay.
So I'm
looking forward to that.
I'm hoping they balance each other out.
Good.
All right, Eric, what have you played lately?
Well, I won at ConCon a few weeks ago. They give door prizes, and I got a copy of Dungeon. This was originally published in 1975. This is TSR's Dungeons & Dragons, Wizards of the Coast product that is sort of a family version of Dungeons & Dragons. This particular one, is only a couple years old. They redesigned the art and sort of upgraded it. The components are not fantastic in Dungeon. The cards are very small. It's just got a standard D6, stuff like that. But it seems it's passable. It works. The board is quite large, and it depicts this giant catacomb-filled dungeon. And the whole thing is split up into different levels. So there's a level 1 section, level 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to level 6. And the monsters that you will discover in these areas get more difficult as you progress through the dungeon. There are corridors and there are some secret passages. Ordinarily, you need to roll to get through these secret passages. There are 4 character classes that you can play. And there's a standard fighter class and there's a wizard class. And some of the classes are better at fighting at the higher levels. But in order to win the game, they have to have more treasure. The object is to earn a certain amount of treasure and then make it back to the center of the board, and you win. The 2 lower classes only need 10,000 treasure to win. But if you get the more powerful characters that can fight in the more difficult rooms, you have to get 20 or 30,000 in order to win. The wizards have spells and stuff. They can shoot into rooms and do crazy things. It's basically based around all of these different decks. There's a level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 deck, and when you enter a room that hasn't already had a monster defeated in it, you draw a card, and based on what character you are, you have to roll a certain total on 2d6 in order to defeat them, and you either succeed or you don't. If you don't succeed, they steal some stuff from you. They could kill you, that's possible, but they also could steal things, but they hold on to it. And then you can fight them on your next turn and maybe get your stuff back, it's nice. So you lose that cool sword you were holding, but it's not gone for good. As long as you eventually defeat the gelatinous cube, you now get that stuff back. You work your way through this map, clearing rooms, defeating monsters, collecting treasure, getting bonuses, and eventually somebody manages to get the total and make it to the center. My 4-year-old destroyed me in this game. He was, trucking along. He got some good rolls. He got some great equipment. He was getting some good bonuses, and I got killed. I went for a final push to try and maybe catch up to him, and I just got destroyed.
Did he laugh?
He did, a little bit. He thought it was a blast. And then when his mother got home from work, he rushes up to her. Mommy, Daddy and I played a game called Dungeon, and I beat him. He was so excited. The game is pretty simplistic. It's very straightforward, which I think works for playing with kids. It is totally designed as a family game. There's not a lot of depth here. But I don't think it was ever intended to have that. I think the production of this newer edition is nice. It fits well as a next level game from other family games that people may have in their collection already. And I think it will see some playtime from the kids. In fact, my older son, my 8-year-old, has been pulling it out and playing solo versions by himself. So it's really been a hit for him. And I think it's certainly a success with the 4-year-old. He's just delighted. So a thumbs up for Dungeon. It's not deep, but it's fun.
All right, I played a game called Bastion. This is from Hobby World. The company is probably best well known for Viceroy and Spyfall.
Yes.
Bastion is a game, I believe it takes place in the same world as Viceroy. I'm not sure. I think it's like a popular online game or something, but whatever. This game looked like Castle Panic, because in this game, you have monsters attacking your castle, and if they get through, you die.
Okay.
And I thought, another Castle Panic game. But it actually plays more similarly to Ghost Stories. These monsters are lining up around the board, and you need to fight these monsters. To do that, you need magic of different cubes. And this game has an interesting cube collection. The way it works is on each board, there's boards that are built in a hexagon format, so there's 6 of them. On each board, there are 3 magic sources. So let's say there's a purple, a yellow, and a red. To get cubes from a source, let's say I want to get cubes from the yellow source, I need to put a yellow cube that I already have there, and then I get 3 yellow cubes. So essentially, I gained 2 yellow cubes. However, once I do that, no one else can get yellow cubes from that resource. The same thing with the red and the purple. However, there's also a tower on the board. If I go to that tower, let's say it's a green tower, and I put a green cube there, I'll take the 3 cubes that are on the board, or if there's less than 3, whatever cubes are on the board, opening up those magic sources again. But then that tower is locked. Or I can go into the middle space and take all the cubes that are on towers, clearing them out. So it's a really interesting progression of how you get these cubes, and I really enjoyed this. And then to fight monsters, you just go to that thing, and this monster costs 3 green cubes to beat, this one costs 5. But when you beat monsters, you have a chance to put buildings out that make your magic sources better, or ways that you can change cubes into other colors. It's a pretty simple game, and it's a good level of difficulty. You can make it much harder by adding in monsters with special abilities that show up. But I really enjoyed it. I was very impressed with it. It's not like Castle Panic. It's not like Ghost Stories. It's kind of like halfway in between. But it's a good halfway in between. And so that is Bastion.
My classic game for this week is FreshFish. This is a Freedom and Freeze design.
Ooh, we could have put this in for math last week, I think.
We maybe could have. So in FreshFish, you've got a big grid, and it grows or shrinks based on the number of players. There are 4 commodities in the game. I think it's games. There's the game stores. There's fish. There's oil, and there's one other thing that I'm totally forgetting. But it's 4 things, and there are production facilities that are on the board at the beginning of the game. Now, what you want is to get your stores, your game stores, your fish markets, etc., to be as close to these production facilities as possible. Now, you do this on your turn. You've got some little cubes in your color, and you can choose to claim a space on the board. You put your little cube on that particular space. You have to grow organically, though. You have to place next to other cubes that are already on the board. So you can't always get the best locations next to some of these places. You have to sort of hope that you'll be able to do that in the future. Anyway, you can place one of these cubes, claiming that space. You might not get to keep it, but you've set a claim for this. Or you draw from the stack of tiles. And these tiles might be like regular buildings, in which case you need to put that regular building on one of your spaces that you've claimed. Or it might be one of the stores, which you then auction, because you all have some money to start the game, and it's a blind auction. You closed fist auction, you reveal your bid, and whoever is paid the most or is closest to the start player will get this thing, and then they can put this thing down on one of the spaces that they've claimed. Now, the key is that there always has to be access, road access, to whatever is on the board. And if ever you've positioned the tiles so that there has to be a road, because the road occupies the same spaces as the buildings, very large roads. And if you've arranged the tiles that there has to be a road somewhere, well, it forces a road. And the game is all about forcing the road. And knowing the rules for what forces a road is one of the trickiest aspects of this game. But that forced road may plow through somebody's reserved building space, your own reserved building space. But hopefully you've positioned your store to be as close as possible to the production facility. At the end of the game, once everybody has all of their shops out on the board and you've sort of filled it all up, you count how close you are and you subtract that from your score. Your money, it's like whatever money you have left over minus the distance to all of your facilities, and whoever has the highest score wins. Often you're already in the negatives. Everybody's in the negative. If you've managed to stay positive throughout the course of the game, you've done very, very well. I managed, the guy who runs our game group always manages to win this game because he rarely pays for anything. And I tried that strategy this time, and it worked out really well. Like, the indication, the inclination in this game is to try and get those spots that are so close to the production and willing to pay a lot, pay through the nose in auctions in order to get those. But actually, if you just don't pay as much, you can get within 1 or 2 spaces of where those people who paid a ton have managed to place, and it ends up working out better because you are, again, bidding in victory points here. It's an interesting game. I fear it's a little too fiddly to really stand up to today's designs. It's fun, it's interesting, it's brain-racking, but the rules about where these roads match up makes it difficult to grok. And ultimately, I think that's why it hasn't really stood the test of time. There is a new edition from 2F, from Freedom and Freeze, but I enjoyed it again, but it's really going down in my estimation. I don't know how much longer it's going to stay in my collection. But I did enjoy it. FreshFish.
Yeah, it's really just too mean for me. I don't mean the players are to each other's, but the game is just too brutal. Brutal is probably the word. You
can really get hosed. You may think you have a perfect position for something, and then the road plows through 2 or 3 of your cubes, and now you have no board position, which means that if something comes up for auction, you can't even get it. It can be really nasty and not immediately apparent how a move is going to affect the board.
All right, I'm going to talk about Spheres of Influence. This is a Risk-style game in which players are going to control, possibly, if you play with few enough players, you'll control multiple colors on the board. They're cubes, piles of cubes everywhere, of armies, and your goal is to control as many regions as you want. Think Risk, but instead of Asia, there's like Asia, Australia, and so on. There's probably like 15 different regions on the board, maybe. So they're broken up into smaller regions. And it's like Risk in that you can move into someone else's territory and you fight using a combat mechanism where you roll a die for each unit that you have in the battle, and 6s kill your opponent. By the 6s, I mean if you roll a 2 and a 4, you got a 6. You basically add all your dice together and you divide by 6, and that's how many hits you get, basically.
Right. Okay.
But the defense also gets a special die that they roll when someone's attacking you, which just has straight up a hit on it, or it blocks an opponent's hit. So that's kind of cool. And you can also pay cards. There's also special cards in this game that you get. And when you capture different territories, sometimes when you capture territory, you get a special card. But where the game is, I think, very unique is everybody has 2 cards of their color. You shuffle these together and make a deck. You turn over the top card. If it's green, the green player then takes a turn. They can move units from one spot to another spot on the board. Then you turn over the next card, and so on and so forth. There are many spots on the board that have oil on them. Whenever you capture one of those spots, you get another card next turn.
Oh.
So the more oil spaces, the more cards you have. That does not guarantee you the victory, as I found out having like 8 cards and no troops.
Oh.
Because each space on the board also gives you a certain number of troops when you control it. So you might want to control a space because, like, let's say you control areas in China and India. That's a lot of population, but not so much oil. So you're capturing spaces because of good population, because you're trying to finish off a region, because of oil, and because you get special cards. So it's good. It also has a certain number of turns, and then the game ends. I feel like it's a 90-minute game, maybe. I like it. It's a Risk killer, basically. I would never play Risk over this game, ever. I don't know that I want to play this style of game all the time. And there's still luck in it with rolling the dice and stuff, but I enjoyed it. I was surprised. I wouldn't mind if they got rid of the cubes and put like soldiers. But it just had some interesting things going on, and I really like that card mechanism with the oil. That just worked really well. It was a neat addition. If you like Risk or you like the idea of Risk, I think you'll like Spheres of Influence.
Neat. This is on the review pile for me. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but
yeah, I don't know if you and your group would like it as much as I did.
Yeah,
but because you're not as much of a combat heavy group, but at the same time, it might be light enough that you might enjoy it.
Interesting. Last for me is an expansion for Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar. This is Tribes and Prophecies. So in Tzolk'in, you've got these huge gears, and you place your workers, and the gears move around each turn, and the longer you leave the guys on the carousel, the more powerful the action you have to take. Now, there's a couple of modules that go into this expansion. One adds a fifth player. And we were about to try this for the fifth player, but we were explaining it for one player who hadn't yet played the game at all. And I could see the fifth player's eyes start to glaze over as we're going through the explanation of this. And eventually he said, you know what? I'm out. Not necessarily that he wasn't going to enjoy the game, but just he looked at the clock and said, I don't think this is, I'm not going to be an asset to this game, so I'm going to leave, which doesn't happen a lot. And I sort of put it out there on Twitter. Has this ever happened to you before? And a lot of people said, no, but I think I should have 2 or 3 times. Anyway, it adds a 5-player that you can add a 5th player to the game. It also adds sort of this prophecy track, which are events that you can see coming that trigger periodically throughout the game. But the module that I found very interesting that we did play with, adds like an extra inner ring to the main wheel, the big wheel on Tzolk'in. And every 2 rounds, it brings one of these tiles into the forefront, and they call it a lightning action. So instead of, usually you have 2 choices in this game. You can either put guys on the wheels, or you can take them off the wheels. If you are putting guys on the wheels, you don't normally get to trigger any of the actions. You have to sort of wait a turn to trigger the actions. But these lightning actions that rotate through can be triggered immediately. There's only a couple of spaces for them, so not everyone gets to do it in any particular round. But you can trigger these, and it may let you translate goods into corn and vice versa, or it may let you harvest out of turn. It may let you purchase something out of turn, maybe build a building that you normally wouldn't get to build. They're sort of copies of what's already on the board as an action, but having it available as an instant is kind of neat, knowing I'm going to get that guy back immediately at the end of the round, that I can sort of jump. A lot of this, a lot of Tzolk'in is about planning ahead, and it sort of lets you catch up. Like, what I really need to do, what I really wish I had done is get on this wheel 2 turns ago. Oh, wait, that action's available to me right now. I have to pay a corn, I think, to jump in and do it. But having that available is really nice to be able to sort of get back on track, rather than saying, oh man, I'm totally hosed. I should have done this 2 turns ago, and now I have to wait 2 turns to do it. I liked it. I like having that little extra inner thing. And there's a sort of a phase 1, phase 2 set of these tiles. The actions becomes, I think, slightly more powerful in the second half. I liked it. So the expansion for Tzolk'in, Tribes and Prophecies, thumbs up for me, just not for that one guy who went home early.
So I'm not a huge fan of Tzolk'in.
Yeah?
But I've been considering playing it again, because the designers of Tzolk'in are like my favorite designers of Euro games at this point in time.
Okay.
Do you think this expansion would make me like it more?
What didn't you like about it before?
If I'm being completely honest, I think it might be because I was looking at these gears and hoping they were really cool. In essence, they were just slightly cool.
Well, they're still there. I don't think the cool factor goes up that much. I really enjoy the game just because you do have to plan through that, and it's a difficult mental exercise. But will this inner circle of lightning actions change things for you? I don't know. Having that out is pretty cool.
All right. Well, I'm going to probably try it again, regardless.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump down to 2 games that are on the opposite ends of the scale. We'll start with the light end first, with Greedy Greedy Goblins. This is a new game from AEG, and in this game, each player has a couple goblins. I know they're goblins because they're big yellow plastic discs, or red discs, or green discs. So there must be a goblin, because I'm assuming discs are goblins.
Sure.
there's a bunch of mines around the board. Then there's a bunch of tiles, and the tiles are really good quality. They're that backlight plastic I like a lot. And they're all placed face down. You say go, you look at a tile, you see what it is, and then you place it on one of the mines. Some of the tiles are torches. When you find one of those, you put it face up. The rest are placed face down. When you put a torch face up in a mine, you can look at one of the tiles on that mine and turn that tile face up also. You then also can put a goblin on a mine whenever you want, and that shuts that mine down. It's almost like Kingdoms, the old Knizia game, but real time here. Once everyone's put down their goblins, the game ends, or the round ends, I'm sorry. And you reveal each mine. And there's different gems and diamonds that will give you 1 or 2 points in that mine. There's also sticks of dynamite. A stick of dynamite doubles all the value of the gems in a mine. 2 sticks of dynamite triples all the gems in a mine. 3 sticks of dynamite blow you up and you get no points. In fact, you lose 5.
Oops.
Right. Super fun that way, right? Especially since some of the tiles have 2 sticks of dynamite on them.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, it's cool because you want dynamite in your mine, just not too much. And everyone's playing at the same time, so I'm putting a bunch of tiles there, and you're like, he's putting a bunch of things in that mine. I'm going to throw some dynamite in. But you didn't throw enough in, and now you just helped him score a lot of points. Or you could just throw your own goblin in. I'll take that one. He's like, sure, you can have this. I was just throwing a bunch of dynamite in there anyway. There's also special cards you can get. Some of the tiles give you cards. There's also one place where there's no tiles are put. You can just put a goblin there to get a card. And these cards you can play in the future, maybe to avoid dynamite or to add bonus points to the tiles. And that's it. You just keep playing till someone gets a certain number of points, coins, and that person wins. But I like it. It's light. It's speed, but it's not too fast, right? Because you can't just grab tiles and throw them around. Otherwise, if you start putting a bunch of tiles in a spot, I just sit there and grab it with my goblin. So that's Greedy Greedy Goblins from AEG. On the other side is the Dilluvia Project.
Ooh.
This is from Spielworks. This is a heavy Euro game.
Okay.
Which I was tricked into playing because they said, it's like Targi. And I was like, what? I love Targi. What they meant to say was, the first part of each round is like Targi.
Uh-huh.
And then there's a giant worker placement and economic game inside. Oh, you tricksters. But you know what? I may have already posted my video review in this, I don't know. And in that one, I may have already put my final thoughts because I'm planning to play this some more. But the game is fascinating. It's the kind of game that if you've never played before, you're going to lose. I'm pretty sure of it because you need to you're getting an engine being built. And it's a very unique engine. You have a points that you're getting over the course of the game, but you also have this other points, and I forget what they're called, but every time you get 10 of them, you get a point. And I said, well, big deal. You know, they're just 1/10 of a point. But as the game goes by, you get more of these tenths of a points, and more of them, and more of them, and more of them, and so they like start compiling, and then your points start going up higher. It's a neat little system. And you're building buildings and putting them on the board, and each of these buildings gives you different things, and there's like a switch on each building, so it might be producing more money for you, but after a while you're like, I'm going to change this to points. So I'm getting points instead of money. And I like that. There's just a lot going on, but there's a lot going on. And you have workers that you could put out on the board, but you also have one special worker. When he goes to a spot, that worker gets you a special bonus, but you got to figure out the best place to put that. Money's tight in the game. There's, like I said, there's that Targi thing at the beginning of the game where you're putting things in and you can buy any of the tiles in a row that you pick. But if I go to a row, no one else can go to that row. There's a lot going on, so much that it's difficult to explain it in audio format. So go watch my video review when I put that up. But I was intrigued. Rulebook, not so good. Production, some of the stuff small to read, and it gave me a great laugh on the scoring board when it said 63, 67, 65, 66, 67. So I think if Eric got 66 points and I got 67, even though it's on the 65 spot, I believe I would have won. Because I would have more points than Eric, I think.
Sure.
Anyhow, despite those few small productions, the game looks really nice. It's cool. It's about building some city in the future in the clouds, or I don't know, whatever it is. But it's a solid game, but it's going to require a steep learning curve. So I might talk about this in the future at some point. That is the Dilluvia Project. All right, well, I was say now for an older game, but Eric has already taken care of that. So now for another older game, which was reprinted last year.
Welcome to Cult of the Old, where I discuss games we may have forgotten about, or games that failed miserably, but still had some good mechanics in them.
He's Brian Counter, and everything he does is counterproductive.
Today, I wanted to talk about St. Petersburg, designed in 2004 by Bernd Brunhofer, rated rank 7.3, and 171 on BoardGameGeek. Now, there was some interesting conjecture on who the designer really was, but that's a whole other topic. In short, St. Petersburg is an engine-building game with a Russian backdrop flavor in an effort to get victory points. There's a board, but it's really just a placeholder for cards, because St. Petersburg is essentially a card game. Everyone starts off with a little bit of paper money, and you can buy 4 different styles of cards. You can get workers like a farmer or something. You can buy buildings. You can buy aristocrats, and you can buy upgrades. Generally speaking, workers provide you money at the end of that round, buildings provide you victory points at the end of that round, and some can provide you a little bit of money as well. Aristocrats mostly provide you with victory points, though some can provide money, and upgrades basically take something you've already bought and make it more efficient or just generally better. Now, I'm not covering all the rules here, but it's interesting that if you buy the same type of worker, for example, you get a lot of farmers, the cost is reduced by 1 for each one you buy. So if your first one costs you 7, if you buy another one, it costs you 6, if you buy a third one, it costs you 5, etc. Cards that remain unbought stay out on the board and can actually clog up the board, so if they stay out for a while, they become cheaper to try and entice players to buy them, but the board can still get clogged at times. The winner is, of course, the one with the most victory points at the end of the game. Is the game any good? Well, it's got a pretty good rating. And in today's world of magpies attracted to the shiny new object, having that rating's a good thing. Still, it did get nominated for the Spiel, and some people still love this game. Just so the listeners know, this is referring to the original edition, not the second edition, which I haven't even seen yet. First, the negatives. There's a theme here, but it doesn't really exist. I'm a Euro mutt with Viking and Russian blood in there somewhere, and the Russian theme does absolutely nothing for me. This is cold and mechanical. Also, my personal trading in the Mediterranean with a dour-looking guy on the cover is, are we building European cathedrals involved with victory points? Black. Also, there's the artwork. I'm not one who likes people who criticize everything, but doggone it, let's just say I am really not a fan of the artwork in the original printing of the game. The graphic design is fine and good, and I can see everything, but really not a fan of that style of artwork. At this point, you may think I hate the game because of the negatives I've just mentioned. However, I like it. It's simplicity engine building that you actually feel a part of, and it works. Even with the coldness and the mechanics that don't intertwine well with any theme whatsoever, it's still a great time. Not a fan of the overpowered purple cards in the 5-player expansion, but it still works. There are other games like Dominion that have an even lesser theme, but I still like a fair amount. I mean, I like Trains, which quote-unquote borrowed a lot of ideas from Dominion, but it has that board, which I still like to this day. But Dominion is still fun, themeless as it is. You feel like you're building something. For more Cult of the New stuff, I'll give the free plug to Dale of Merchants. It's a slower deck building game, but you feel like you're building a machine there as well. It actually has a cute theme, but you feel like you're engine building nonetheless. And I've grown to really like that one. So if this all sounds interesting for St. Petersburg, check it out. Be aware that there's 2 versions, though.
You know, St. Petersburg is a game that still baffles me. And I think the problem is that I've never played it in person. I've tried to play this online several times. And something about there's the turn order for various types of cards changes. And so you may be first for, you know, the farmer cards, but somebody else is first for a different set of cards. And when you're playing this online, you have no sense of that. Like, you get a notice that it's your turn, and you have no idea what has happened while you've been away, like how many people have taken turns and how many haven't. It really doesn't work. And so I need to play it in person, but I don't really feel the need to play it in person. It just never connected with me.
I don't know. I think you might really... I really like St. Petersburg, and I did not like it that much to start out with. You can go back and remember my original review, but as time goes by, I've enjoyed it more and more. I think the 2-player game is fantastic, and this newest version really adds some cool things to it.
All right.
All right. Well, so much for feeling good.
And now, another tale of board gaming horror.
Oh my, that's horrific.
Gather round, children. Like oh so many listening, the attic of the house I grew up in became the museum and repository of the history of my upbringing. Kept in the dark and the variances of seasonal temperatures, there lied my childhood. From early drawings and now non-decipherable attempts of modeling to later school reports and exercise books, this was where my past resided. To my shame, it later also became home to my collection of board games. This thanks to the invention and now my main interest in home computers and electronic games. Up into the roof went the games given to me by my friends' older brothers, like Up, Periscope, Microdot, and Escape from Colditz Castle. Up went all the D&D and TNT, Tunnels and Trolls, source books and adventure guides that my older cousin used to play with me. Out instead came the basic programming books and the buzz of excitement felt when opening a present and hoping it was the latest Nintendo handheld game. And so it could have continued until one last day of school term when we were all allowed to bring in a game of our choice from our home. Of course, everyone's game was electronic in nature, and the classroom soon filled with the pings of spaceships attacking spaceships, monkeys avoiding crocodiles, and ghosts being eaten. That is, except one. One boy, a friend of mine called Chris, took out and proceeded to set up a board game. Naturally, I was intrigued, walked over, and sat with him while he taught me the game. The game was Apocalypse by Games Workshop. I immediately wanted to own this game as I had never before come across a game like this. You didn't actually roll the dice. You chose a face and hid it from the opponent to try and guess. You then attempted to take over or destroy the world. Well, from then on, my mind was set upon saving up my pocket money and buying this game. While I waited until I accumulated enough cash, I would go up to the school library and peruse the White Dwarf magazines there, and they were filled with adverts of the latest offerings from Games Workshop. But my mind was preoccupied on getting Apocalypse, right up till the time I had the money, when an advert appeared for a new game called Battle Cars. The game based on a post-apocalyptic world where insane drivers would take their cars out for mayhem and destruction, all in the name of a sport. Instantly, the artwork and game description and theme gripped me, and it was this game that I proudly clutched to my chest walking back from a local toy store. The game did not disappoint, even though most of the time I just played the game against myself. I played the heck out of it. Once I even found someone who also had a copy, and we joined boards and had a huge arena tournament. Nothing could take me away from this new board game experience. Oh, hang on. That's a lie. Getting a part-time job which brought in a small income, managing to get served underage in pubs, and the noticing of the fairer sex all conspired to get battle cars placed away into storage. Maybe one day I would poke my head up in the attic and remember, but for now life drew me into another direction. Fast forward a couple of years. We were moving out of our family home. My mother had run off with another man, and my father was remarrying. The house was sold, and myself, my sister, my father, and his new wife were moving into another house. My dad hired a van for the move, and we all pitched in together to frequently load the van up with our old belongings. My dad would then drive to the new house, drop it all off, while my sister and I got ready for the next load. Maybe we were naive at the time, but why would we not assume that each van load actually made it to our new abode? It was not until much later, when we had settled in, that we learnt that one particular trip went via the local dump instead. Yes, and the load in question, it was all the stuff from the attic. My dad had gotten rid of everything up there. All childhood memories. Everything. Everything. It was all too late. My board games were gone, compressed and mashed beyond recognition. Wait a second. Fast forward again about a year. I was now living in a shared flat with a tiny bedroom to myself, all because my stepmom gave my dad an ultimatum. It was either get rid of the kids or her. Dad, not wanting another failed marriage, selected her. We were sent packing. Not surprisingly, I surrounded myself with good friends and wanted nothing really to do with family in any shape or size. Therefore, I was not entirely thrilled to be paid a visit one day from my sister. I didn't really listen or pay attention when she informed me she had visited Dad and that he was in the stages of removing and getting rid of all ties to his past. I wasn't listening because I was far too interested in what she was holding in her hands. Dad had given her all the stuff he had found while rummaging around during this clearance. I could not believe my eyes. It was battle cars that she had on her. Before she even passed it to me, I was already imagining opening it up to see the contents. The car and driver boards, the rule set, the ammo and weapon tokens, and the red damaged chits. It all came flooding back to me. I was so happy. One thing from my past had survived, and it was a board game. Huzzah! Oh, wait a moment. I waited until my sister left as I wanted to savor this moment. She left. I sat on my bed. I opened the box to find no game. The box had been emptied, the game thrown away, all so it could hold the photos of my mother that my dad didn't want.
I don't know what to say here.
I'm sorry?
It's a tale of horror, man. Maybe it's a tale of depression.
That's a depressing story.
Okay.
In many ways.
Wipe your mind. Folks, don't give up. There is a good story coming later on. Don't worry. But for now, let's go to the sweet spot.
You just hit the sweet spot!
Hello everybody, this is Glenn Flaherty from the Sweet Spot, and this week we're going to talk about Unpub 6, which was a convention in Baltimore for unpublished games. Eric Ling and Rob Davio were there. That was pretty cool. I saw them in the corner. I was going to say hi, but really what I have to say to them, so whatever. Okay, so here's some advice for game creators. First, let me say there's a lot of great ideas there, a lot of things that could be really awesome games. But here's some advice I think a lot of people could benefit from. Number one, you got to make your rules as simple, clear, and logical as could be. A lot of games are convoluted. A lot of games had unnecessary rules. I know they were there to balance the game out, but you got to work it into the theme somehow. Two, at this point, you got to make player aids. You want a good experience. You want to create a game that people can understand and that flows well, so make player aids. That's a no-brainer at this point. You need to spend time to make your game visually engaging. And I'm not talking about AAA art, but you got to put the energy in yourself to make it something people want to play. There's a lot of games that look like people scrawled it on a dirty napkin on their way to the venue, and I can't read the bad handwriting. I don't know if that's a square or the circle that triggers the thing. Put time into it. You got to be aware of your originality, both in gameplay and the visuals. There's a lot of games that were just a slight massage on a game that already exists, and there's a lot of overlapping visual cues from other games. Separate yourself. Make your game something that I need to add to my collection. Cost versus game time. I saw a lot of overblown production, and I'm not sure I would want to pay a lot for a game that plays in as little as 15 minutes, and that's even with 4 players. I saw a lot of games that could be boiled down to a quick card game. So you got to think about that cost idea. Find ways to shorten your setup time. A lot of games had a lot of long setup time, even for the proctor who knew how to set it up. And a lot of games had mid-round setups, so it kind of interfered with the flow of the game. Sometimes the setup took as long as the gameplay itself, so work on that. Okay, another thing, try to keep your player downtime to a minimum and try to not eliminate people. We played some games that eliminated people right off the bat when we had people sitting at the side for like an hour. Probably not something you want. Lastly, you gotta have enthusiasm. As we were walking around trying to find tables to join, some tables were incredibly packed, some tables had no one, and we easily could have sat down there. But the creators of the game had such little energy and enthusiasm for their own product. Hey man, if you don't believe in your idea, I'm not going to believe in it either. So I moved on to where the energy was. Okay, and a few shout-outs. The game I'm most excited about, Crimson Creek 2. Played Crimson Creek 1. Crimson Creek 2 is going to have plot lines, and I think they said it's coming out in September on Kickstarter. Really excited about that one. Best Proctor. There was 3 great ones. Greg James from Crimson Creek. I forgot the name of the guy, but he did Royalty Rumble. He was really good at helping with the games and putting you in the spirit of it. And the designer of Moonquake Escape, which I think just got picked up by Breaking Games, if I'm not mistaken. He was so engaged and believed so strongly and explained it so well. That was a really cool experience. And actually, he also gets the award for the best board. Moonquake Escape looks so cool. You got to check that one out. Okay, so that's kind of the recap of Unpub 6 pretty soon. And in the next few episodes, I'll be talking about short games that you play at lunch breaks. And I'm going to do a whole bunch of hard games to fit your time and money restraints. All right, talk to you soon, guys. Take it easy.
I'm the Broken Meeple, and this is the Starting Tile, where I talk about alternative gateway games that you might not have considered that can be used to introduce new players to our hobby. Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Starting Tile. Hopefully this comes out on time. If not, sorry for the lateness. Life, the universe and everything, it gets in the way sometimes. Now my theme for this week is city building, because I was one of those people that always used to play with the toys where you got to build your little city with the walls around and the buildings and the vehicles and do all sorts. And I quite like those old PC games like Sim City, where you built up a city from scratch and you tried to run it efficiently, or in my case you ran it to the ground, because as much as I enjoyed those games, I wasn't very good at them. I've only got 2 for you this time because trying to fit in 3 is actually a bit of a stretch sometimes. And also, when it comes to city building games, there aren't that many good ones, in my opinion, that fit the gateway weightness. There's great city building games that are for the complex gamer, but I'm trying to do gateway games here, so naturally I've got to keep it simple. So I've got 2 belters for you, so let's get a move on. Dice City. Yes, this is an underrated, in my opinion, game by AEG and Artipia Games, where you have a grid map with several dice, different colours 1 to 6, and you have a board with some basic buildings on it to begin with. You then roll all your dice, and using those dice by taking them off one at a time, you activate certain buildings to get resources or special abilities or points. And then from a deck of cards, you can pay the resources to build buildings and put them anywhere on your board that you choose, replacing other pre-built buildings. And then when you roll the die on that one next time, you will place the die on the newly upgraded building. And you can do this throughout your entire board. You can build it in whatever way you like. From that point, you then have a choice. Go attack bandits nearby for victory points, go build more buildings for more victory points and special abilities, or you can even attack other players and steal their resources and negate their buildings for a short while. But it's not quite as horrific take that as you might think. This is underrated in my opinion, and this is what Mighty Koro wishes it could have been. I seriously suggest giving this one a try. If you like dice and city building, it's a great combination. Next up is, in my opinion, one of the best games to come out in 2016 so far, and that is Quadropolis by Days of Wonder. Now, this is a recent release around the end of February, start of March, and as theme goes, it's not the most dripping of themes for city building, but you are building a city. You have a construction site in the middle of the board with tiles for things like tower blocks and shops and harbours, that kind of thing, and you have your own board with the numbers 1 to 4 around it. You have 4 architects, and you place them around the construction site, much like you do in Targi with its worker placement mechanic. And with these architects, they tell you how far along this grid you move in order to pick up a specific tile and place it on your board. However, the tile that you place on your board has to go in a spot which matches the number of the architect you used. And you've only got 4 of them, numbered 1 to 4, so it's finite, and people can see what you've got so they can try and hamper you in various ways. Once you've taken the tile, you then also have to place the pawn there called the urbanist, which means that other players cannot place an architect that points directly at him on the grid. It's a very neat little system. But this is so cleanly designed, so easy to learn. You've got a classic mode and an expert mode. The expert mode's not particularly difficult, but even the classic mode is fun. It just simplifies some of the scoring and takes out a couple of the buildings. And it's really nice quality components, really nice looking, and the insert is really good because you have 4 rounds and different tiles for each round, but they're organized in the insert so that you can literally just whip out a round of tiles, use them, put them back in that spot, take the next round, whip them out, use them in the next spot. Really great design. I can't recommend this one enough. Quadropulous. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this segment. My name is Luke from the Broken Meeple, and I welcome you to the hobby. The starting tile is laid out, the drinks and snacks are ready. Let the games begin.
Another game I would recommend for people getting into city building games would be Sunrise City.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's just one of those games. I still don't understand this one. Like, completely flew under the radar. It was like, hey, It's another game from the guys who made Alien Frontiers. And it has the thickest tiles in any game ever.
Yeah.
And they're 3-dimensional. It has a weird scoring system. It's just neat all around. I really enjoyed it. And it's not that difficult to get into and play. All right.
It's a good one.
I said a good story was coming, but not yet.
This past summer, I picked up Tikal. It was a nice, hot summer day, and one of my gaming partners suggested we set the game up in the backyard on the picnic table. It's not windy, he said. It would be nice to game outside for a change. So we went outside along with one other person and set up a 3-player game. The strategy was deep, fun, and intense. I cornered a section of the board with a few pyramids that I started building up. Another individual was going mainly for the treasure tokens and getting sets of treasures. When the first scoring opportunity came along, I found myself leading the pack. But when the second scoring opportunity came along, everyone had become tied up. We were all very surprised. In this last part of the game, things became extremely cutthroat. Tiles were nervously placed. The last of the tents went up. We knew the end was coming soon. There were perhaps 2 turns left to go. We all stared at the board quietly, planning our last moves to squeak out the most points. Then a huge gust of wind came through and blew everything off the board. The end. And this is why you don't play outside.
Okay, Eric, so a couple weeks ago I went to the Gathering of Friends. And I just wanted to give a quick rundown of some of the things I saw and did there.
Cool.
The Gathering of Friends is a invite-only convention. Don't be sad if you can't go. There are many other conventions to go to, run by Alan Moon, and a lot of designers and publishers get together and they talk there, and they basically have fun. Some of these guys have been going, and ladies have been going to this convention for 20-plus years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long time. And I found it, it's interesting. You wear different color badges. Like if it's your first year, you wear a red badge. If you're Friedman Freese, you wear a green badge.
Of course.
But if you've been there for 20 or more years, you wear a black badge. And I found that those people were the friendliest people there. But if you weren't there, hopefully you watched some of our interviews we did there. We did designer interviews with Eric Lang and Jake Cormier and Gil Hova and Alan Moon himself and many other people. Tom Lemon. And so we'll hopefully do that at many different conventions. So hopefully get a chance to do that. There's a lot of prototypes at these conventions. I don't normally play prototypes, like, ever. But these are prototypes that are going to actually be turned into published games, so I make an exception at the Gathering.
Okay.
So I played at several. I can't talk about all of them. I did enjoy the Munchkin CCG. This is Eric Lang's version of a good Munchkin. It's a lot of bluffing. The same silly humor, which I don't mind if it's on top of a good game. And I enjoyed it very much, even if I did lose to Eric Lang. Cheater. Tides of Terror or Tides of Horror. I know it was called Tentacles of Time, but he didn't like that. It's a sequel to Tides of Time from Portal Games, and this is essentially the same thing, but with madness included. It's a 2-player card game where you're trying to get the most symbols of different things on your side, but now some of the cards have madness tokens on them, and if you get too many of those over the course of the game, you can lose the whole thing because you've gone insane. I got to go see Canada. This convention takes place in Niagara Falls, so I could walk across the river and see Niagara Falls and many other Canadian sites. Canada is a great country. Home of the Blue Jays, my favorite baseball team. So I got to go see a Blue Jays game, watch them whoop up on the Yankees.
Nice.
That was always satisfying. Well, it was really a funny game because Ignacy Trzewiczek said, I must come and see if baseball is as boring in person as it is on TV.
Okay, yeah.
And also, I don't understand it at all. So on one side of him and Mary, his wife, was Mike Fitzgerald, who I would think is like the perfect person to explain baseball to somebody.
Yeah.
And on the other side was Gil Hova. And they were both explaining in great detail all the rules. And as the game went by, I was like, whew, there really is a lot of rules in baseball. Like, why did that guy throw that base? Why did he do that? Oh, that's because if this happens, and I was like, oh. And at the end, Ignacy was like, yeah, this is too complex. And then Z was like, are you kidding me? You designed Robinson Crusoe. I don't want to hear about too complex. And it was just fun, though, to go together as a group and do things like that. We also got to see Snakes and Lattes. That's a game cafe in Toronto. Well, 2 of them, Snakes and Lattes and Snakes and Lattes College. I was able to see both of them. They're both amazing. They have a big selection of games, a lot of mass market games, but that's the people who come, but a lot of just great games, great table space, great drinks and food. High service, well-lit places. Well, one's not as well-lit as the other, but it's more like a cozy place. I just like them both. They both had different feels. They both sold some games. You could buy some games there, but it's mostly just for going and hanging out and playing games. And I really wish I had one around here because I would play it all the time.
That would be cool.
Top notch. I give them both an A+ rating. That was really neat. And I got to play some other new games. I played some new stuff from Rio Grande. I played Tin Goose and Alan's Adventureland. The different people were. That's where I played that Dilluvia Project. There's just a lot of different new games, and seeing some of the stuff coming out this year. An expansion for Seven Wonders Duel. I didn't see the new Time Story stuff though. I was looking for it.
It's keeping that under wraps, I'm sure.
But I think it's going to be a good year. I mean, I think every game's going to be a good year at this point. There's just so many good games that come out.
Yeah.
But this, it's good to see the industry so healthy and people talking about this and talking about new games and seeing what designers are showing off what they have. I'm very excited about everything. It was a fun convention. It was very restful. I spent more than half time playing games, but also a lot of time just, sightseeing, seeing the falls, recording some videos for the show. And just had a really enjoyable time. And I'm excited to see, like the final products and stuff at conventions as we go along this year. And that, I think, is that, folks, for the Gathering of Friends. Let's go now to the Gathering of Friend. Or if you only have one person.
Hello, and welcome to the Solo Game Corner. And look who's here. It's Derek Davis.
Yo, how's it going? Derek Davis here from the What Did You Play This Week podcast. Welcome to the Solo Game Corner, a place where introverted gamers come for a social recharge. This is the segment that presents the games I love to play to recharge my energy for more social board gaming endeavors. Over the summer of 2015, a group of good friends and I got together to run through a campaign of Star Wars Imperial Assault. I took on the role of the Imperials and loved facilitating the experience for other players. Each scenario was fun and engaging. There were swings of success and failure. I could drop a bevy of stormtroopers on my opponents or chase them around with some crazy beasts. Conversely, the rebels can prove their tactical prowess in combination with their ever-growing skill set to bludgeon and defeat me. Overall, win or lose, it is entertaining for everyone involved because it always feels like you have a shot at winning until the very end. However, playing the Imperials in this game cultivated two cravings for me. First, it made me want a chance at playing the heroes, though I really do love bashing in the heroes' faces. Second, it created dreams of dungeon crawling and adventure, and when I looked on my game shelf to find the perfect title to quench my thirst, behold, Pathfinder, the adventure card game, jumped off the shelf to save the day. I grabbed a copy of Pathfinder as soon as I could after listening to a few reviews because I knew it would be a fun solo adventure game. But I was a bit concerned after my first play with two characters that seemed woefully underprepared to take on the challenge created by Mike Selinger and his design team. So I did something incredibly stupid. I took a team of 6 characters and began to run through the first cycle of adventures. Now I know there are a lot of people in the solo gaming world that cringe at this. Playing 6 hands at the same time, managing the stats of 6 different characters, that sounds like a horrible, boring slog. And honestly, I would have said the same thing until I actually tried it. But after my first scenario, I found myself anxious and excited to continue. And it was the perfect game to help me recharge after a wonderful but socially draining game of Imperial Assault. So what do I like about Pathfinder ACG? I love the way each location is constructed so that as you explore it becomes easier to guess what might come next. I enjoy the push your luck aspect of the game. Should I flip another card? It might be a blessing. Nope, it's a stinking orc that's going to hack my leg off. I love that I can deduce where the boss of the scenario is and I have to decide whether or not I can corner and defeat it or if I need to block off all possible retreats before I can engage. I also like the synergy of the characters. I want my Dwarf Ranger in an adjacent location so that I can fire a throw-in axe if need be. And I love the way each character feels and how they develop so differently throughout the campaign. In short, I found a good scenario of Pathfinder adventure card game to be a great complementary experience for Imperial Assault that helped me recharge for the next session. Have you played Pathfinder solo with multiple characters? Do you think it's foolishness? What do you have to say? Let me know. You can find me on Twitter at SoloStoryGamer and on the What Did You Play This Week podcast in my Revolving Review segment. Have a great week.
And now here's Ken to talk about dudes on a board.
Hey, it's Ken talking about games that involve dudes on a board, taking over control of lands of each other and all the fun that goes along with it. Today, I want to touch on a category that has been talked about a lot over the years, but in advocation of one specific version of the game. That would be Axis and Allies and their global 1940 edition. Now, you have a first and second edition of this, which is not its own standalone game. What it is a combination of Axis and Allies Europe 1940, either first or second edition, combined with Axis and Allies Pacific 1940, either first or second edition. Each game is its own game that is comprised of 400 to 500 pieces, 2 separate boards put together for its own game. So a global campaign, which is encouraged in the rule books as the boards are designed to be played as one grand campaign. All 4 boards can be stacked together for one of the largest Axis and Allies boards you have ever seen. Most Axis and Allies aficionados, such as myself, will have either heard of this or has seen it at a convention or has tried it and absolutely loved it. It creates a marathon gaming session that can last for at least a day. Mine, I have ended them at about 10 hours and still had no clear victor on either side. So it is something that will take up a significant amount of real estate in your weekend, but I encourage you to give it a chance. What you have in this campaign is 2 different types of mobile units, 6 different types of ships. You have 2 different types of bombers. You have fighters. You have infantry. 2 different types of industrial complexes, naval bases, air bases. Bombing raids are completely different in this one. You don't just go over there, bomb, take some IPCs away. No, you have to have a dogfight first. There are built-in anti-aircraft units to try and stop you from doing it. You have 9 total powers. 9! Remember the original ones where you just have a handful, enough to count on one hand. Those days are over. This one throws you almost 2 full hands, and actually we're going to fill both of them up because the United Kingdom has 2 separate economies that have to be tracked independently of each other. So the variety and the flair involved in this one is leaps and bounds beyond anything that you'll find in an Axis and Allies game. You have different ways of collecting income. You have national objectives that will basically pay you out for completing or not completing certain objectives or going to war or not going to war with certain powers. However, you have to balance that out with the fact that if you are gaining income for going to war or not going to war with an opponent, chances are they are receiving a similar benefit that is only going to increase with each delay. This is a game that is not for someone looking for light warfare. When I host a game of this, I send out rule books, I send out reference guides days before we actually play. You set up the entire buffet of food so everyone is able to stay there, hydrated and fed, and enjoy the full-blown experience. So, I encourage anyone who has tried a war game, who has tried a game with dudes on a board, as I like to call it, to look at the absolute grand scale, big picture that is out there, and that would be Axis and Allies 1940, preferably in my book, second edition, global campaign. There you have it. Hopefully you enjoyed. Thank you for listening. This is Dudes on a Board. Ken signing out.
So interesting that I also have played Pathfinder adventure card game solo, but only with 2 players. And I guess I can see how 6 would be useful because, I mean, part of the real draw of that is the melding of the different powers, and the more of those you have in play at a time, the more interesting the game can be. But yeah, I got to agree that that's a lot of stuff to keep track of. 6 different hands with all those powers, I'd get confused.
I really think at this point I would just play a role-playing game on a computer that keeps track of everything for you.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, I don't know. I mean, to each his own, I guess. But I think I'm going to stick with my 2, and then sometimes my son joins in, and we now have a 3-player game. So that's fine.
All right. Well, here we are. I promised it something good.
This better pay off.
Tales of Amazement.
I am a big fan of your show and podcast and how you have helped grow the hobby of board gaming. I have been an off and on board gamer for years now, with my hobby being more on than not since my 6-year-old has an interest in her daddy's games, and we've begun playing together. I figured that I don't have many outstanding tales of horror. I would tell you a story about my family, my mother-in-law, and Settlers of Catan. When my daughter was first born, my wife, an immigrant from China to Canada, invited her mother to stay with us, ostensibly to show her Canada, but also to help us as a new family. She had 3 phrases in English: hello, thank you very much, and okay. With a new child, we were all working overtime, and often when my daughter would go to sleep for the night, well, for 3 to 4 hours, we would all go to different rooms to do something on our laptops. 3 of us all in different rooms doing something to wind down to go to sleep. After a few weeks of this, I approached my wife and let her know that I was saddened that all we did with her mom was feed her and use her for babysitting. Too often we had no energy to do anything with her. As a Canadian that spoke only English, I didn't have enough Mandarin Chinese to talk to her effectively in a conversation. I asked my wife to ask her mom to play Settlers of Catan with us. I would teach both of them to play. My wife largely ignored my board games and said, "My mom never played games. I think she would hate it." Using what little charm a sleep-deprived husband could muster, I was able to convince my wife to ask, using the hope of family time together as the payoff. Since Settlers has little in the way of language barrier outside of the development cards, I was able to use my wife to translate, as best she could, my explanation, and we all played with a rule that as soon as a player purchased a development card, it was played then. This allowed us to read her cards and let her know the result. After the first game, Lao Lao, Mandarin for grandma, exclaimed, "Zi Iza!" One more, and we played again and again. Almost every night afterward, we would get together and play Settlers. She kept score as to who won and was so competitive. My wife was so happy to see her mom smiling, giggling when she used a soldier card to steal my resources. Eventually, I was able to make business cards that has an English and Chinese translation of the development cards, and we were able to keep some cards as a secret to steal from each other at choice moments. 2 to 3 games a night, 4 to 5 times a week, I learned how to say all the resources in Mandarin. After months of these games, there must have been hundreds of them. She had to return to China when her visa was running out. Sadly, when she returned to China 6 months later, she was diagnosed with cancer. My wife went back to China and left me and a very young daughter alone to take care of Lau Lau. In the end, she had to be in the hospital for days with other poor people afflicted with this horrible condition. In pain, little access to entertainment in a Chinese hospital. May you never see one. I remembered all the good times we had with Settlers, and I went off and got Travel Catan, and I printed 2 sets of the Chinese-English development cards I had made before and sent them, at great expense, to China. According to my wife, while in the hospital, during her last days, in the one corner of the hospital filled with sickness and sadness, there was one room where patients would go to play a little game no one had heard of in Tianjin, China. To laugh, roll dice, and forget the cancer treatment, playing the Settlers of Catan with Lau Lau. Huzzah.
I'm telling you, it's a good story.
You did not lie.
All right, well, let's get to Question of the Week.
It's time for the Dice Tower's Question of the Week, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., in which our team of gaming experts answers one of your questions, thus increasing the odds that someone will get it right. This week's question: what's the best way to get a publisher to take a look at your game?
Jonathan from the Snakes Cast. In the game industry, as in almost every industry, it's not so much about what you know as who you know. If you want a publisher to get a look at your game, the most important thing is knowing who to talk to. And the best way to find that out is to have friends on the inside of the industry. Spend time at industry events. Get to know people. Meet the people who design games, who publish games. Get to be their friends. Help them out with playtesting. Help them out with whatever you can. And if you can develop those friendships and relationships, they will help open doors for you, help you to find the right people to talk to at other companies, and help you to arrange for appointments to meet them with your game designs.
Oh, it's my turn already.
Where's our contributors, man?
You know what? I think everybody wants to hear the answer to this question. They don't have any advice. Well, I don't have any direct advice either, because I have designed exactly 0 games, and sold even less. But what I've heard is one of the best ways to approach a publisher is to email them first. Showing up at a convention unannounced with your box of fun isn't going to work because they're busy and they've already filled their time with appointments. But at least if you believe Mr. Bonacor, if you send an email with a very brief description of your game, who it will appeal to, what age range it's looking at, even, maybe a market that you know of for this game, you may be able to get an appointment to have them take a look at it. I've also heard good things about the publisher speed dating events that you'll find at various conventions, but again, having not experienced them, that isn't something I can really recommend, but it might work. Tom, do you have better advice?
All right, well, normally I say everything I want to say has already been said, but that is not the case here.
Not this time.
Okay, the one-word answer here is network. It's really the truth of it. You start by attending conventions. If you can pull it off, go to conventions. I'm not saying selling your game, just going to them or having an online presence, networking online, getting to the fact where people know who you are. And you have to kind of be a giver, not just someone who is interesting and entertaining, fun to be around. You go to conventions, you talk to people, you talk to publishers, you talk to them, and you learn about them and their designs. This whole thing about designing is not a one-way street. It has to be both ways. You have to care about what other people design and meet people in the industry other than just being like, I got a game to show you.
Mm-hmm.
No, like, I mean, you just go, hey, what's your name? Stephen Buonacor? How do you pronounce that? You know, just go around and meet people and talk to people and get to know them. Even maybe volunteering at their booths or doing different things, running games and such. Because when you get to know somebody and you become friends with people, when you say, I have a game later on, they are much more willing to take a look at it.
Yeah.
If I emailed Stephen Bonacor now and said, I have a game I'd like you to look at, he probably would.
Mm-hmm.
Because he knows me. I don't have a game to show him. There's also conventions like Protospiel. I believe Protospiel just happened a couple weeks ago, where designers get together, and it's a good way to show off. There's some publishers show up, but it's also a good way to get feedback. And you can go online. There's forums, BGDF. There are Facebook forums and other places where you can get involved with other designers and talk to them and learn about games. When you're actually doing the presenting of the game, you can make the appointment ahead of time, like Eric said, and you should. Waylaying someone's not very helpful. But be excited when you're showing the game, but also be humble. Your game is probably not going to sell millions of copies. If you tell me it's going to sell millions of copies, I feel pretty confident that that is absolutely not the case.
Mm-hmm.
And then talk to companies that are making the kind of game that you want to show. A big miniatures game, you probably don't want to be showing that to Playroom Entertainment.
Right.
And a party game is probably not something Fantasy Flight Games is interested in. Know the publisher and know your own game. All right? Again, don't be saying this is just like Monopoly mixed with something. Most publishers will turn you off right there. Mm-hmm. If you say this is the game that's going to replace Monopoly, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, I've talked to publishers all the time. They've already shut you down at that point in their mind. But at the same time, don't fear this rejection. You're going to get rejected, probably. And don't be upset by it. But the one thing I always want to say is don't listen to any one particular person, but listen to people. If one person comes to you and goes, you should change this, and this, and this. Like, okay, well, I don't know. But if everyone says, hey, we hate your bidding mechanism here,
mm-hmm.
then it's bad. And make sure your prototype looks good. Be ready to show it to people. Be ready to... It shouldn't look like garbage. But at the same time, you need to be able to explain your game in a minute. If you can't explain your game to me in a minute, I don't want to hear about it. I'm not saying you need to explain all the rules in a minute, but you need to have a 1-minute pitch because people don't have a lot of time. And again, don't be comparing it to other games. Just what does this game do? If you can break it down into mechanisms and theme, tell me what this game does. Make me interested in it because that's what the publisher wants to know so that they can make other people interested in it. Anyway, that's the stuff that just came to me off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So, I think that's it.
It is.
Should we end this show?
Yeah.
That's where you're supposed to say yes.
Yes. Well, I did say yes. You were just talking.
Oh, I'm talking so loud I can't even hear it anymore.
Sure.
Well, okay. Until next time, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Eric Summerer.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode, number 456, was recorded on April 21st, 2016. Coming up next week, it's our top 10 critters in games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Vassell Memorial Fund is dedicated to providing support to members of the board gaming community in their hour of need. If a catastrophic event has turned your game upside down, find out how we can help at jackvassell.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom and me, with assistance from Jason Thompson, Itai Perez, Eric Matthews, and Rob Searing. Genie Thefts provided by Hey, That's My Wish! Timothy Pinkham composed our theme, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games at great prices at CoolStuffInc.com. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network, including The Broken Meeple, Flip the Table, On Board Games, The Game Pit, The Party Gamecast, Board Games Insider, and Board Game University. Find out more at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming. So I hate to break it to you, Tom, but this whole co-hosting thing was just a networking opportunity so that I could make a lot of contacts and sell my hex-based curling game.
That would be a long con. Did you get my tweet on that subject? Or my picture?
I did see that there was some tabletop curling being played at the gathering. And I think my response was, of all of the tweets from the gathering, this is the one that has me the most envious.
Here's the deal, though. When we were playing that curling game, I swept in front of the puck and nothing happened.
Ding! That is Tiny Broom joke number 632.